Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Lovejoy, and I'm really excited that you're joining us today to talk about a very important topic, customer experience. I'm also very excited to be joined by Julia Maldonado, owner of In Tandem Digital Consulting and a customer experience professional. So the topic of customer experience is so critical these days. As business owners, we know that the growth of our business is dependent upon keeping current clients coming back, repeat clients. But what keeps repeat clients coming back is the experience they have with our business in the prior transactions. If they don't have good experiences, they're not going to come back, and you run the risk of losing that client. So having a experience for them that meet or exceeds their expectations is critical. And that's the focus that we're going to look at today. I find that a lot of business owners are more focused on getting new clients in the door than they are about making sure that current clients have an outstanding experience each and every time that they purchase from the client and each and every time they touch the client. It may be that they're not in a making a transaction. Maybe they're calling about a question or a customer service issue. Every time the client touches the business, it has to be an outstanding experience for your customer. So it's such a critical topic these days where keeping clients is critical. More and more businesses are chasing fewer and fewer buyers, and so you can't afford to lose any clients. And that's why I'm really excited to have Julia Maldonado on the phone. As I said earlier, Julia specializes in customer experience. She has over 10 years experience working with organizational leaders to help them identify and remedy issues in their customer experience. So welcome, Julia.
Thank you, Jeff. I am really happy to be here today. Happy you asked me, and very excited about the topic of customer experience and journey mapping. It's one of my favorite, not only to discuss and to educate on, but to learn. It's ever changing and ever evolving. But before I get started on all of the things that I have prepared today, you had shared with me your visual and concept about customer loyalty. And I think it aligns so well with the material that I've prepared and the customer experience journey mapping in particular. I told you I was going to do it. I created a slide, and would you mind sharing the customer loyalty ladder concept with everyone first?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, because it's a slide that I really enjoy sharing with my clients. So this is obviously a ladder. And the idea here is that we want to move people up the ladder to the top rung. The lowest rung here is occupied by suspects. Suspects to an organization are anybody in your geographic area or your demographic market. They don't know you, you don't know them, but they're out there. They become a prospect when they've heard about you either on maybe they saw a billboard, maybe they got an email, maybe they saw an advertisement in some paper, maybe they heard about you in a networking event. However they heard about you, they now reach out to you so that they're starting to show the first sign of interest in your business. The next step at the ladder is they now have come in and they've actually made a purchase. And this is where we start diverging between what I think best practices are and what is typically found in the market. Because most business owners, when someone makes a purchase, they consider them a client. I think of that person as a shopper. They've only bought one time. They have no loyalty to you whatsoever. In fact, they're probably just checking you out. And so that really highlights the importance of that first experience, because if it's not a good one, they're not going to come back, and you won't even have the opportunity to move them up the ladder. But let's say that the experience is a very good one, and they come back a second time and a third time. Now they're becoming customers. It's at this point that I consider that buyer a customer. They've bought a couple times from you. They keep coming back. They're showing the beginning signs of loyalty. Then the next step up the ladder is something called a member. A member is where you've done things, you've treated the customer in a way that they begin to feel like they're part of the organization. They're starting to get some real stickiness here. Maybe this is, you go in a bar and you see names on mugs. That's what the bar is doing to kind of say thanks for the members. Maybe it's buy 5 lunches from me and you'll get a 5th one free. Maybe it's whatever programs you can think about that will begin to give that buyer a sense of importance above and beyond the normal that they would get as a customer. And then to take that to one step further is an advocate. This is where the member now begins to feel like they're even more important to you. An advocate you might say, if you're a retail shop, you might say, you know what, for our members, we're going to close the shop and we're going to have a closed door sale. And we're going to close it early, and we're going to invite all of our members, all of our advocates to come in and buy at 25% off just for you guys. So now you're really developing in that buyer a sense of feeling like they're special, they're appreciated, they're valued, all of which are characteristics of building loyalty. The loyalty that this buyer is now feeling, having gone through this progress, is growing each step of the way and culminates in them becoming a raving fan. And a raving fan is somebody that's out there actively selling you. They're not just they're not just recommending you when someone asks about a marketing company. They're actually proactively talking to people about Julia's marketing company. So the goal is to create raving fans out of all your customers. Very few businesses can say that. They have some raving fans, but what happens is they spend all their time focused on these bottom 3 rungs, and they don't think about what is it that I can do in my business to build increased loyalty. And there's a concept we used to use in banking called share of the wallet. In other words, getting more and more sales from your existing customers so that you become more and more valuable to them, rather than focusing down here where you're not building any customer loyalty and that you're churning through a lot of prospects and shoppers. So Julia, that's what I call the ladder of loyalty. And it's a slide I love to share with clients because it's often an area of their business that they neglect. They're so focused down here that they're not thinking and recognizing the value of this. And it's 20% 20 times easier to sell to this group up here than it is to make a sale to this group. So, they need to be thinking a little smarter and focusing here than all exclusively down here. That's that slide, Julia. I love that slide.
I really love the visual of your loyalty ladder, the ladder of loyalty. I think you're exactly right that all too many businesses, big or small, focus less on advocacy and creating that retention piece and more on acquiring new customers. And like you mentioned, not all loyal customers are born from loyalty programs or even discount incentives like you mentioned. It really has to be end to end. So I think that's a really good place to start as far as defining customer experience and a customer experience journey. It is end to end of, and I want to get into, I think that's a great place to start to figure out just how many of your customers are opting out. How do you know that? This is why learning about customer experience and journey mapping today is very important. That's what I want to share with everybody watching is how do you find out how many are opting out? At which point or interaction, how you mentioned, Jeff, during their entire journey with your company and your brand, and then why? Typically, why are they opting out? So that is where, in order to answer those questions, let's start with simply defining customer experience journey. I have found in my experience, all of the different companies and industries and with clients that it is defined vastly different across companies and industries. And that caused a lot of great confusion. So again, this is why I enjoy educating about the topic, because there needs to be consistency. It is ever evolving. So if we go into defining customer experience, everyone needs to keep in mind as we talk about the example coming up is it's the sum of all interactions your customer has with your business from end to end, again, from the beginning, the contract signing or meeting you to the very end. It's holistic. That is key. It is the entirety of your customer's experience with you, again, your brand, product, and or service. It's the physiological response. It's your feelings and emotions related and associated with how well you and your company meet consumers' expectations. So begin thinking about this definitions. I know it's a long one, but all of these words are deliberate and intentional, and you're going to see as we move through the example. But for those of you where this concept of customer experience and customer journey mapping is new, and you came today to learn how to improve your business. So I think the first question is, how well do you know your specific customer journey? Do you know every possible interaction? Now, while we're talking about this today, take out the complexity. So there are variations, there are different channels your customer can journey with you and your brand, but think about typical interactions with you on average while we're speaking today. You can typically garner enough insights to determine your full customer journey just by that question. You can ask yourself these 3 questions, okay? So how many interactions do your customers have end to end with you? If you can't answer that, it's a pretty good indicator that you need to conduct a customer journey mapping session. You need to look at the entire journey. Are you collecting feedback regularly from your customers? Are you evaluating that feedback? Not only are you collecting it, what are you doing with it? And then is your support offering seamless or frustrating? Jeff, you mentioned support. So I think with a lot of small businesses and sole proprietors, and then even mid-size, the owners are heavily involved either in the beginning and or at the end, but maybe not in between, and maybe not when there's issues. This last one is so incredibly critical because you have to think about that consumer, your customer already is frustrated when there's an issue. When they need support, they're already having a bad experience. You need to be able to alleviate that tension and frustration and solve their problem quickly and effortlessly. And then the last thing I'll say is with the collecting feedback, it is so crucial. It is number 1 to ensure that you have a mechanism for collecting that feedback.
And Julia, I'm always amazed at how few business owners actually survey their clients, and and maybe that's because they're afraid of getting negative feedback. But I look at it as that's a fabulous way to learn about what's wrong with the customer experience. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a completely legitimate fear. And as a business owner myself, we all know how detrimental a positive or negative review or feedback can be for our business. But it's important, like anything else in life, stepping out of your comfort zone, realizing and spending some time to understand those pitfalls, because that's your first step in rectifying and retaining customers.
Right. Yeah. And it's, and for those people that are hesitant about it, I would actively encourage you to do it, because, just think of the consequences. If you don't fix whatever is identified as a problem, you may be losing clients very quickly. That could have been prevented if you had gotten the complaint, fixed it, and then plugged the hole, so to speak. So I think it's critical to survey clients and to do it often.
I completely agree 100%. I think it's number 1. You constantly need to evaluate where you're at, and not only, once in a while, but, like right now we're in a pandemic. The world is always changing. You have to change how you do business. You have to evolve and adapt. So it's incredibly, incredibly important. I agree. And, also I've got a fun little stat, and I think you mentioned how expensive it was to acquire a new customer. It's 5 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than to retain your existing customer. And I think it was A Harvard Business Review even said it was between 5 times and 25 times more expensive to acquire a new customer. And you have to understand the effort involved, and you know that, and I'm sure everyone who is a business owner watching today knows the effort involved in acquiring a brand new customer than it is to nurture and continue that relationship with an existing one. And so let's see here. Here's the customer journey map. Okay, so this is the tool that I want to share with everybody watching today. This is a very simplified version and format. And what we're going to do is we're going to spend time looking at this fictitious company, Riveting Remodelers Group, and a fictitious consumer walking through each of these. Let me move this over here. All right, so you can see on the left-hand side, I've got 3 rows here. I've got our stages that a consumer moves through on their journey with you, the business and brand. And then you can see the action. So here we're going to float in the action that the consumer is experiencing, going through, and those associated feelings and emotions while they're going through that particular stage. And at the end is that customer's experience. Red being a poor experience, green being a great one, and yellow being neutral. I would say those are not great either. So as we move through these, let's start at the top with awareness. All right, so your consumer, your prospect is searching for a solution to something. They're always trying to solve some type of problem. In our example here, let's say that they are looking to remodel their outdated kitchen. And in this one, there's a bit of sense of urgency because they're putting their home on the market, okay? So because of that sense of urgency, it's causing some stress, some frustration. They're coming in already on a poor experience because they're overwhelmed with searching online. They've called friends and family. They've been on the phone. So they are just really just trying to solve for this problem quickly here in this stage. Moving to consideration. Here, they have stumbled upon your website. They find it user-friendly and informative. They look at some of your social media platforms. They see you have a great following base. They see some 5-star reviews. They read them. They're happy. They're really ready to go to this next determination, decision, purchase phase, whatever you'll call it. So they are in a great place. They're having a good experience since they've found you and they're considering. Next, moving to this third phase or stage is the purchase. They've already had one conversation, let's say, with the owner, but then they think everything sounds good, and they receive the contract, and the pricing is a bit different. So they're a little put off. It's not by much. They have a few emails back and forth with the owner, and they discover that the pricing has not been updated on the contract or the website. So it's a little blip. Again, it's not by much. So they're at a neutral. They kind of note it, and they move forward at this point. Moving into the next stage, they meet with the designers. They go to the fancy designer center, and the designers are late to the appointment. And not only that, they kind of get a raw feeling. They feel like they're slightly unprofessional. That's not great. We all know that a lot of consumers can move to a very bad experience here very quickly. But in our case, for our example, these consumers are very tolerant and patient. So again, it's just another blip, duly noted. They're moving into, they're really excited to get started, this build phase. Oh gosh, but now here we are. We've started working with subcontractors. There are several issues with each of the subcontractors and all the different projects going in within the kitchen. The prices are increasing, and now we're moving past deadline. We are now definitely at a red. We're having a poor experience during this interaction. Now in this final inspection stage with this journey with riveting, we are past our desired finish date. Our house is already on the market. There's this urgency. There's all this other life stress going on, and we're still finding lingering issues. So this consumer is going into this last stage already on a poor experience. It's likely that they're going to take this poor experience and attribute it to the overall experience with riveting. So at this point, you're most likely not going to get a review or a good referral from riveting, and you can only cross your fingers that they don't leave you really negative feedback on Google or something similar on your social media. So you've lost that repeat business that you mentioned at this point. This is why it's critical at any one of these interactions to focus on each and every one.
Yeah, Julia, that's a fascinating slide. I love that to kind of highlight how the touch points they can have different experience. Sorry, different experiences. Excuse me.
Excuse you.
At each touch point, are the awareness, consideration, and purchase always the same? Meaning, are they always stages in a customer experience journey?
Very good question. So no, absolutely not. Any CX professional, myself, I customize these based on the client, based on the company. So you want these stages or phases, I call them, to be familiar. You want them to incorporate, you know, what the customer or the organization is comfortable with, whatever they call it. So, you know, I have heard awareness to be called attract or interest. Purchase can be the decision. You can have this design and build phases as implementation or onboarding, let's say for a software company. Of course, a lot of customer experience life cycles and journey maps will end with retention. And of course, if you have a red experience, you're not gaining that objective of retention, or if it's a green one, you have fulfilled that objective. So
got it. But in general, are these the stages then that of a typical customer, however you label them, they're in general the stages that owners need to think about as they're thinking about their customer experience?
Yes, absolutely. And in general, you always want retention, raving fan, champion, whatever you want to call it there at the end. That is your ultimate objective and goal.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So now that we've mapped out our customers' interactions, our journey essentially, from the stages and the actions and the experience here, we've identified some gaps. And here you can see I've added this row of opportunities for improvement. This is the whole goal of doing this journey mapping exercise for everyone watching, if you decide to do this yourself. Here's where, from each of these stages now, you want to take the gaps identified, and you either want to do a deeper dive, which can essentially mean a whole nother journey map within that particular stage, or you can see simply a couple of different opportunities that you can enact and execute on to improve your business. So for this first one with riveting, I would say they can just create a greater brand awareness. So in this phase, no matter your business, you always want to be that solution to the consumer quickly and effortlessly. So here it's, you know, maybe they need to work on their SEO strategy, for example, and they need to come up quicker. They need to be top of mind and have that great visibility. So that alleviates some frustration coming into the journey with riveting. Here in the second consideration phase, I would say, you know, that was a great experience. It's reflecting really well in their customer experience. So I would say continue to gather those customer reviews. Continue what you're doing. Maybe look at it and see is there opportunity to optimize. There's always room for improvement, but continue what you're doing there. During this third phase with purchase, we identified the gap that some marketing collateral, the website and the contract had different variations that needed to be updated. So I would say figure out and align with your communication, optimize your communication pieces, align with teams, figure out when an update throughout the company happens, you know, what happens next, who's communicating it to who does the updating and when. During this design phase, so this is one where I would say it's a little bit more complex, right? It's not black and white. We identified that the designers were late and possibly unprofessional. You know what, we're all human beings, so I always say, you know, is this a one-off with your designers? Do they have a bad day? That happens. Or are they treating all of your customers this way? And this is very important if you have partners or if you outsource, to know what's going on. And this is a great interaction here where you may not be involved and see this bad experience for your consumers. So here it would be to do a deeper dive. You can sometimes do here's where I would do a mini journey, if you will, for this particular end-to-end interaction during the design phase and conduct an evaluation of that design team and their processes. For this build phase, where with a remodeling company, this is where your customer is spending the majority of their time during this interaction. You want this to be a good one. And there's so many different people and processes involved that are most likely out of your control. You're going to want to do a deeper dive and figure out in this build phase from beginning to end what's going on here and identify more gaps. So assess those subcontractors' processes. How are they communicating with your customers? How are they setting expectations? And are they meeting them typically on average? Or are they missing the boat, or are they exceeding them? Are you guys aligned? And then finally, during this final inspection, why are our projects not finished on time? What's going on there? Is it your scheduler? Maybe they're scheduling those subcontractors in the wrong order. It's messing things up. It's a process. It's people. What's going on there? That would deserve a deeper dive again for that particular one. So again, I want everybody to keep involved today with this particular example of a journey map that I'm sharing. This is a basic overview of the entire journey. What I typically do is do those deeper dives. And again, this is basic and simplified. So when you're thinking in your head about your customer's journey, you're going to see complexities. You're going to say, well, wait, Julia, you know, my customer may come through the website one time, but then I may get a phone call through a different channel. Don't think about the complexities. Think about the linear, typical journey with you. Start there and start peeling back the layers of the onion. That's what I kind of always say to my clients there.
Julia, one of the, you know, an example of peeling things back is that having worked with a lot of remodelers, you know, I find price increases are something that they always expect, but the homeowner doesn't. And it oftentimes is something that really can cause a very bad customer experience, because the homeowner doesn't, you know, they kind of get locked in on the final quoted price, but they don't realize that all the changes they've made and requested of the builder are increasing the costs. And so maybe in this case, maybe if the builder had upfront talked to the homeowner about, you know, discussing change orders and the importance of starting the process with a pretty clear understanding as to what the final product is going to look like in order to minimize the number of change processes is a way to keep the costs down. Maybe that would that be a good example of a way that the riveting is dealing with and trying to raise that red experience up to at least a yellow.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is proactivity. So
Right.
It's extremely important to anticipate where your customer is going to get frustrated, and not only frustrations, but where you can delight your customers. A lot of customer experience professionals talk about delighting that customer. So in riveting's case, in the example today, my suggestion would be create some type of customer facing resource in the beginning that sets expectations and discusses, hey, you may have a change request here at the end towards our build phase. And just so you know, it's going to cause a price increase. It's going to cause the deadline to be pushed a little bit depending on the type of change order. So they're going to be aware of it, and they're going to be less frustrated when it happens, because you know it's most likely going to happen. And that's, again, why gathering that feedback is so important, because that allows you to continually see these themes and patterns to be able to anticipate things like this proactively.
Yeah, Julia, I always find that, you know, the more the owner can put themselves in the view the process through the eyes of the buyer, the more they will understand the significance of some of these gaps. If they're viewing it from their own eyes, they don't understand, they may not understand the importance and the significance of some of these issues, that if they were to flip their view from theirs to rather the buyers, they would immediately understand the significance of some of the gaps and correct them proactively, rather than letting them fester and become a real problem.
Yeah. Customer experience is kind of so similar to empathy. What you just said is putting yourself in your customer's shoes, that perspective, gaining that perspective. And again, if you can do that and you understand what they're feeling and what makes them frustrated or delighted, you can better identify these gaps, which are going to lead to these opportunities for improvement.
Yep.
So After you have, so you've completed this journey map here, you've moved through the stages, you first identified what your stages of your journey would be. Again, your typical journey for your customer, those actions related. You've gone through the experience. Are they typically poor, neutral, or good? And then you've identified these opportunities for improvement. So what's next? So here, you want to take those gaps and opportunities that you've identified, and here you want to kind of ask yourself, step one, define your gaps. So are they people, process, or product related? Are these broken processes that need fixing? Is it people or product that need optimizing, coaching, complete replacement? And that leads to the second step. So I say streamlining, tweaks, or complete overhaul. And what I mean by that is, you know, for instance, with riveting example, a streamlining tweak might be updating the website with that price, that new pricing and the contract. Those are little tweaks that streamline your process and your journey and create a better experience. Whereas a complete overhaul would be, gosh, I hate it, but unfortunately you have assessed and evaluated the design team and you've talked to other customers and you find out it is, you know, customary for them to be late and treat all of your customers this way. So that would be a complete overhaul of probably replacing your design team. And then finally, you need to think about, is it time to explore the introduction of new technology, possibly an automation? If you're smaller, maybe hiring a new person for the customer experience piece, gathering those recommendations. Maybe you're growing and you have a software that does the voice of the customer feedback gathering, and now it's time to automate. So there's various stages that the business can be in to know whether and what to explore there.
And, you know, hiring a new team, you have down here, and hiring a new team member, I often find that that's an issue with business owners that are so closely monitoring the cost and the expenses on their business, but they're not really thinking about the opportunity cost. You know, the cost of it. If I don't hire somebody, that means that this problem is going to continue to fester, and the more it festers, the more I'm apt to be losing more clients. So over time, the cost of bringing on a new person can be small compared to the cost of not bringing it on because of the loss of clients. So yeah. I always encourage people, if you can make it work, I encourage people to do it.
Absolutely. And I think to your point, business owners were always keeping costs low as top of mind, right? Yep. But you also, just as importantly, if not more, like you just said, have to keep retention top of mind. You can't lose with retention top of mind there.
Right, right.
All right, so after you have kind of put all of these things in buckets, you've identified these gaps for improvement, and now you've kind of defined them and spent some time categorizing. Next step would be to develop and implement a CX strategy, or customer experience strategy. So this involves creating an action plan. So what do you do with all this data and insights now that you've collected? You create this action plan that you're going to execute and actually put in place and do something about and improve your business. So that would include a timeline, create realistic goals, okay? Don't just say I'm gonna conquer the world and I'm gonna be the best business. Let's create realistic goals and a timeline in which to achieve those, best way to set goals. You wanna have an allocated budget. Again, so important, we've mentioned it so many times, ensure you have a mechanism for collecting that customer feedback. Not every sole proprietor or small business is able to invest in customer experience or feedback software. It can be as simple as making sure that you have that asking for customer referrals or feedback consistent through your journey. So I'm going to always do it at the end of the journey with me when we are finishing up or doing our training, for instance. As long as it is always consistent and regular, and you're also evaluating that regularly, that's enough, and that's a good place to start. I would say seek professional CX advisement, at least on the first run. I say this because you've seen the basic customer journey mapping today, but you've also seen how complex it can get. When you need to do those deeper dives, when you have partners, when you outsource, when you have employees, it can get a little bit more complex. And the only reason I say that as well is because you don't want to have to do this again or not garner enough insights to help yourself improve your business. That's the whole objective here. And then it's not always linear. I have that because across the board, no matter what customer experience professional or even business coach you talk to, everything is not black and white, right? There are so many different customer journey maps. There is one that you may hear of that's called a 360-degree view. So when we talk about perspective, this is a great model. It's much more complex. It's a discussion for another day. We could do a whole new webinar on it. But the point is, this is where it's all integrated cross-functional experiences. So many different things about customer experience that I love. Again, we'll talk about that on a different day, but keep in mind that there's just different layers to peel back here. All right, and then finally, what I want to leave everybody with, we've talked about the benefits of identifying these gaps and opportunities to improve your business. But what are the bottom line benefits here? So you can see brand loyalty and customer retention. Huge. We've talked about that loyalty piece. Remember how much more expensive it is to acquire a new customer. That's between 5 and 25 times more than to maintain an existing. Just keep that in mind. It's also rewarding. These customers who are loyal, Jeff, you mentioned on your ladder, the advocacy piece. They're singing your praises. They're referring you to their friends and family and coworkers. Secondly, reducing costs significantly. When you're shoring up and creating efficiencies within your whole entire end-to-end journey within your business, you're reducing costs, plain and simple. Easier and faster return on investment and return on your marketing investment. You are going to not only allow your consumers to see a return on their investment by providing better experiences, but you're going to see that return as well. And then finally, I think I'm handing it off to you now, Jeff.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much for that, Julia. That was outstanding, and I hope the folks listening have gained an added appreciation for the importance of understanding their customers' experience with the business. The goal of every business owner should be to create raving fans, and not just one or two. You want to have ideally you'd love to have all your clients being raving fans. That's a bit unrealistic perhaps, but your goal should be to create an experience that have people talking about it, creating wow. You hear the stories like of Nordstrom's and Ritz-Carlton, all these companies that have made the customer experience they're driving what they're known for. So adopt that philosophy and think through how you can create that wow that will have people talking about you and becoming incredibly loyal and ultimately become raving fans. Joy, I want to thank you for your great expertise and sharing ideas with us. I've got a couple questions that have come in. Let's see, we got a few more minutes. First, let me just say, though, that we'll be sending out this presentation to everybody that is on the phone, or on the webinar. So, Julia, one question is, how often does this process, do you do one of these journey mappings? Is it an ongoing process? Or is it a one-time thing? Can you give some insight there?
Yeah. So first, I would say it's absolutely not a one-time thing, for sure. Like I mentioned, you want to constantly reevaluate. And I'm sure anyone who's a business owner watching, you have those moments where you feel unbalanced and you have to evaluate something. That's why I love the customer journey mapping model and exercise, using that as a tool, is because there's a formula there. Instead of wondering, gosh, I'm having a lot of customers opt out, or you have some type of indicator, but you don't know where to start. So I guess I can't say typically how often you should be doing it, but definitely when something big is changing around you, you're in technology, let's say, and technology is changing. You need to do it pretty often, once a month, every 3 months, every quarter. You know, as a small business owner right now going through a pandemic, everything's moving to this digital transformation. You should be doing it right now. So I would say you should try to do it at least once a quarter, if not once a month, depending on your business.
And one listener observed that it sounds like it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it can be. That's why I always offer to, you know, if you're not in a place to invest on a CX professional conducting this actual customer journey mapping with you, to get some guidance at least. To ask them, you know, here's what I've identified. I don't understand the entire journey. I have X, Y, and Z partners, and I outsource this particular piece of my business. What do you suggest? How do I start? How complex am I looking at for my journey map? And they can give you better direction on, well, it seems like this particular channel of consumers coming in through your social media, something's happening there. I would start there and figure out what piece or what gap exists there. They can at least give you some direction.
Great. Well, that's all the questions I've got. So, or that have come in from the viewers. So thank you so much, Joey. I really appreciate your time and your expertise on this topic. And I'm sure that you've given a lot of insights to those that are participating. So thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. As I said, we will be sending out this recording and enjoy. And thanks so much. All the best to everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.